Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming to today's session on how to become a positive disruptor. Joining me on today's session is Superstar Communicator Susan Heaton-Wright, who you may recall from our previous session, Superstar Communications. Susan is a multi-award winning impact communications and speaking expert for emerging leaders, and she's also the creator of the Superstar Communicator methodology. By definition, a positive disruptor is someone who challenges current organizational trends and habits and strives to find positive alternatives. A positive disruptor is someone who seeks to uproot, replant, and grow the way we think, behave, conduct business, learn, understand, and live our daily lives. Throw the word disruptor around and people will likely assume that trouble will ensue. The reality is that positive disruptors are one of life's luxuries, especially in an organisational environment. I'm glad you guys have joined us today to find out more and find out how you can become a positive disruptor. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Susan. Susan, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm absolutely delighted to be sharing this content here. And I have to say that it has really challenged me to think about how we can be positive disruptors, because this is the thing. We are brought up, particularly women, to be good, to do our exams, to pass our exams, get really good marks, understand the system for getting good grades and to get your qualifications to be accountants. And then you join your dream job and all of a sudden people are saying, you've got to be a positive disruptor. That seems to be against this route that we have taken. So I'm going to share with you some more ideas about what positive disruption is and what it is not. Why having an open mind adds to positive disruption as opposed to a closed mindset. Making your own opportunities, and I've got a great example of that. The qualities of superstar significance, because I believe that as well as being a positive disruptor, we should have qualities within that that lifts other people up rather than destroys them. And we all know, we've all worked with people or observed people who have a really big profile, but they are awful to their team. We've all been there, certainly in the opera world. I'm afraid to say it was like that. And why it's important to hear different opinions. Now, throughout this, there will be some polls, which Helen, I will be asking her to do those. And it's really good fun because it helps you to think. And also, if you've got comments, please keep them respectful for each other and also for me, because having these conversations is part of learning. We all learn from each other. So here is a description of disruption. It's the action of preventing something, especially a system, a process, or an event, from continuing as usual or as expected. And guess what? During the last couple of years, we have had to change what we do. When the pandemic started, we all had to start working remotely. We all had to socially distance, didn't we? And we had to disrupt our work pattern, the way that we worked in teams, the way that we project managed, the way that we delivered services and products to our clients. And the only way that we could continue was to disrupt the processes that we do. So I've got a question for you. So if we could have the first question up, please. What are your feelings about disruption? Because it might be that we think, oh my goodness, we're going to be the naughty girl in the room because we're not being the good girl, head down, doing our work. It could be they result in my life not running smoothly because a disruption is stopping you doing what you do well. Disruptions at work waste a lot of time. They challenge me to start doing things differently. They result in me continuously living rather than being on auto cue or other put in chat.
Shall we take a look at the answers?
Oh, please, yes. Oh, they challenge me to start doing things differently. I'm really, really pleased that you've got this positive mindset. Well done. But yes, I can understand people saying disruptions at work waste a lot of time, because I know that if we're working on something and somebody asks us to do something else, it can disrupt our work pattern, can't it? So it's useful to think of it as a wider thing rather than positive. Thank you for that. So if we move to the next slide, that would be brilliant.
It's back over to you, so just bear with me 1 second.
Okay, no problem. So we understand now what disruption is. There can be many negatives. If somebody is disrupting the roads because they are demonstrating something, or there is a disruption because there's a power cut, these are they all impact us in a negative way. However, as we've seen with the pandemic, we were forced to disrupt our own work patterns, and there is a new world of working. So a positive disruptor is someone who challenges current organizational trends and habits and strives to find positive alternatives. And this is the thing, it's trying to create positive alternatives that might be more efficient. They might result in a better service for the customer. It might be a better way of working together. A positive disruptor is someone who seeks to uproot, to replant and grow the way we think, behave, conduct business, learn, understand and live our daily lives. So instead of joining a firm or an accountancy firm where you might be, or a financial services organization, and working hard and doing what you're told, you are looking around and thinking, how could we do this better, respectfully for everybody in the office? However, I should flag something up, because I'm aware that there are some people who believe that being disruptive is all about me, about having selfies. I've done this, I'm doing that, I've led my team, it's all about me. Guess what? It's not. It's not about me, it's about us. It's about the firm. What can we do better? And if I can see something that would benefit us all, that's fantastic. Of course, the reality is that if you are being a positive disruptor and respectful of everybody else and working with everybody else for change, you are going to benefit with your personal brand. But that's different from it all being about you. I wanted to flag that up before we went on. So the first thing is to avoid echo chambers. Now, what I mean by that is that it's very easy to literally talk to and communicate with people that are like us. Not only do they look like us, but they might be a similar age, they might be the same gender, they will have the same values as you, and it is very easy to get into that bubble of only listening to opinions that are like our own. In the last few years, worldwide, we have become very, very polarized. I know in my country, we've had Brexit, which split the country in half. And I know that in other countries and communities, there are things like that. And in my country as well, there has been a real split, a real diverse thoughts about the COVID vaccine as well. And I'm sure that there are examples over in UAE of things where people have got really opposed ideas, but we don't listen to them because we filter them out. We might filter them out from what we read, what we listen to, what we watch, because all news, they filter the news that is coming through to you. So the challenge really is to think about how we can listen to other people. And the cancel culture, which is really taking a hold in the United Kingdom, and I understand in some of the universities in UAE, the movement is to prevent people who might have a different opinion to yours, or an opinion that you don't believe in, that those people are being cancelled from doing lectures, speaking at universities. And so what is happening is it's preventing young minds from seeing and hearing opposing opinions and just talking about it. Because in fact, if we hear other opinions, it helps us understand the bigger world. It helps us not to see the world from our own filter, our own experiences, but also from the experiences of others. And we might make better decisions if we hear those opposing views. Now, I was lucky enough earlier this month to attend an event which was run by the Royal Society of Arts, of which I'm a fellow. And what they did, it was a little tiny event in St Albans near me, and they had 8 people that were sharing ideas. Just for 4 minutes. After 4 minutes, a bell went and they had to stop. But it was really enlightening, because there were 1 or 2 that maybe I would not have promoted myself, but it was great to hear those opinions and then have a chat with those speakers. It widened my world. It helped me to understand different opinions, different challenges that people had. And my question to you here is really, what could you do to have those conversations, particularly at work when you are doing a project and you are getting stuck with the progress of it? How could you open up things so that everybody could give an opinion, because they might have different ones and there might be a better one? But also, another thing that I do is that I have my own podcast. I've podcasted for 8 years, and sometimes I have people on my podcast who've got very different views to mine, or they challenge my views and opinions. A couple of years ago, there was a lady who came on for Black History Month, and a lot of the time she was saying about white privilege. Susan, you are privileged because you're white. You need to think about that. And I had never thought about that before. And in some ways it was a little bit uncomfortable. However, it helped me understand things from her perspective and helped me have an open mind in future. It is a real gift. And if we're able to do this as a positive disruptor, we are able to have a more open mind and can share more ideas. I'm not quite sure why the next one's not going. Could we, I can't change the next slide. Oh, there we go. And here is another example. Joel Green, who came onto my podcast earlier this month, he is an international basketball player. He is a motivational speaker, and he has a training company that is sponsored by Nike. He has had the most extraordinary journey in his life. He was brought up in a very poor family, in a very poor district in the United States, in a Black community, and there was a lot of racism. As a 6-year-old, he saw somebody who was murdered, and he was able to run away and escape from this. And he had terrible racism. And understandably, he said that because we were in this poor community, we had a lot of anger towards people, towards white people, understandably. And he said what changed his mind, what helped him to have a more open way of thinking rather than being in an echo chamber, was that age 14, he joined a county basketball team. And all of a sudden there were white boys as well as Black boys in his team. And at first he was wary of the white boys, and then he realized that some of them were just like him, really nice, lovely human beings. And one or two of them were he would avoid, but he realized that there were good and bad people everywhere. And he uses a filtering so that he can filter those bad feelings or anger so that he can turn it round and make sure that he gets the good from this and see the good people. So I've got another poll for you. So if we could have the poll. How could you expose yourself to different opinions and people? And I've given some examples. Maybe that you listen to different podcasts, tend to watch debates where opposing ideas are shared. Go and talk to someone who doesn't look like you. And certainly when I was doing a similar thing for Hewlett-Packard HPE, that was something that a few of the attendees thought. If you are in a cafe or if you're in the canteen at work, go and sit to somebody that you don't know, that doesn't look like you, or different age group, because then you could have a great conversation. Talk to somebody from a different age group, read articles you wouldn't normally do, or your idea put in chat. So I'd love to see the results in a moment. Okay, so 51% attend, listen to, watch debates where opposing ideas are shared. Sometimes you're going to feel a little bit uncomfortable, but if you can relax and listen, because you might learn something, you might be able to see something from a different perspective. Thank you very much for that. If we go to the next slide, that would be brilliant. So we're talking about hearing different opinions, not sticking to our own echo chamber, because we're never going to change, are we? We need to make sure that we have an open mind. And what do I mean by an open mind? That is not somebody who has their closed mind, that they're not listening to other opinions, they're not seeing other things, they are watching, they're learning, they are moving forward with their business, with their careers, with their lives all the time. Thank you. So we need to eliminate those closed thoughts and opinions. I've already said that if we are no longer in an echo chamber, if we're listening to other opinions, it helps us to grow. But another thing is to have an open mindset. So could I change the slide, please? So I talk about growth mindset, or an open mindset, and a closed mindset. A growth mindset is that you see the opportunities, you think forward. So you are open to new ideas. So if you've already moved out of your echo chamber and you are prepared to listen to other opinions, you're going to have a growth mindset. You keep trying new ideas. You are thankful and open to constructive criticism, because criticism can be very difficult, can't it? And there's a whole other webinar about delivering criticism, because it's not always done that well. However, we can really, really learn when we get some insight from somebody else, because there might be a way that we can do it even better. Follow up what you're doing. So if you've got an idea, don't just put the idea out there. Make sure that you follow up by saying, have we done this yet? Could we break this down into steps? Understand that failure is part of growth and learning, and I will touch on that a little bit later, because we don't always get it right. And I always say, as long as nobody is harmed, that it is okay to fail, because we learn from it and we might do something better. But we know, and those people that are polarized, that won't hear other opinions, this is the way we do it, we've always done it this way, they have a closed mindset. And they only think that their way is the right way. We've all come across people like that, haven't we? Whether it's family members or friends or colleagues, people that we have worked with, there's only one way of doing it. But in fact, there might be a better way. That they give up really easily. If they fail at something, if something really, really bad happens, they give up, and they don't pick themselves up, and they don't follow through something. They're the type of people, I would say, that say, oh, let's do this, but they never come up with a steps and a solution on how to get there. And they are offended by constructive criticism. And I would flag up again that it depends on how the criticism is delivered. However, they will immediately take it personally, and they're not prepared to grow as people, to have new ideas that they could share and to disrupt with their colleagues. Could I have the next slide, please? So I'm going to think about my typical closed mindset opinions. How often have we done something or said that we're going to do something? And I have had this all through my life, from my family, I'm afraid to say, who tended not to be very supportive. Some teachers, all the way through my career, that won't work. It's a waste of money. You won't do that. You're not good enough. It's impossible. You're far too old to do that. You're not capable of doing that. It will fail. It will fail. What a stupid idea. That won't work. And one of my friend's husbands, he used to work for one of the major international retail companies, and he was in the finance department, and he was always moaning, do you know what, we get these presentations from other people and I sit at the back and say, oh, we've heard this before, it doesn't work. So he's closed his mind. He has put his blinkers on. He's not going to do it. It's his way or no way. Not surprisingly, he has moved company. He had early retirement for that very reason. I'm not quite sure why I'm not able to move these slides. Thank you. So what we need to do is to create an environment where everyone is able to share their opinions. Now, it could be that you have an ideas lab, for example, or you have half an hour in every meeting where people come up with ideas. What you need to do, though, is to prepare everybody, because people, they respond in different ways to this type of thing. You've got to give everybody permission that it's okay, that any idea is fine and that it will be considered. Also, there are people that process slower, and it doesn't mean to say that they are any less bright. It's literally the way that they think and the way that they communicate. So by pre-preparing everybody beforehand, that can really help those people who might have brilliant ideas to be prepared and to be able to share their contribution. I always remember my old mentor who worked in the advertising industry, multi-award winning advertising company, and he said that he would have one of these ideas sessions, and there was somebody in the corner very, very quiet, and they were getting up to leave. He'd not said something, and suddenly this particular team member said, I think we should do this. And it was the best idea ever. And he realized that he hadn't given the space for everybody to be able to contribute at their speed. And that's something to really think about. So I got another question for you, because this could be a really good way. Even you would be positively disruptive by suggesting this. How about if we do this? We've got a problem with this particular project or this client. Why don't we have an ideas lab for 30 minutes and see how we could approach this problem a better way? And every idea is valid. So if we could have the next poll. How could you create an environment at work where everyone's opinions and views are heard? Create a new communications model so everyone can contribute. So perhaps it is that you have an ideas lab, or everybody contributes when they've got an idea, that they post it in a group. Suggest everyone has a minute to present their ideas. Be aware that there are some quiet people in the room, so give them space to be able to do their ideas. People process in different ways, so make the space for them. Warn people beforehand so they can prepare. So I'd love to hear your answers on this. And I hope that you will adopt this, because this could be a real game changer. You could be a real positive disruptor within your organization. So when we get the answers, that would be great.
I'm going to leave this for a few more seconds, because I can see the rankings changing really rapidly as people are voting.
That's interesting.
Yes.
I love it when there's a bit of dispute about this.
There is, yeah, it's great.
Great.
So
people are thinking.
They are, yeah.
Well done, everybody. I hope that I'm challenging you. I hope I'm disrupting your thought on this. Oh, so yeah, I love that. To create a new communications model so everyone can contribute. I will leave it with you to think about how you could do that best, so that everybody believes they can contribute and they can disrupt. And remember that people process in different ways and different speeds. So well done, everybody. So if we could have the next slide, that would be fantastic. And if I could have control as well. So we need to be prepared to listen to other ideas as well. It's all very well having an ideas lab, and we know that there are situations when people say, organisations say, well, we listen to our customers. Well, they'd made their mind up beforehand and it was a cosmetic process. We listen to them. You've really got to listen, pick, and have an open mind with this. Oh, I've not got the control again, I'm afraid.
I think there's a techie hitch because it is over to you, but I can carry on moving them.
Okay, so if I could have the next slide, that might be the easiest way, no problem. So another thing that we need to be aware of in the back of our minds, that there is a whole thing around affinity bias. We stereotype people and we have an affinity bias that could impact negatively a project and being a positive disruptor. Affinity bias is where we are attracted to people that are like us. We want to work with people who are like us. Now, it might be that we live in the same area. It might be that we've worked together in a previous organization or we went to university together. I know Fazila is on this session. We both were born in the same city in the United Kingdom. We have an affinity. She went to a university where my father and my brother went to. That's an affinity. These are things that bring us closer. And these can be very, very powerful relationships. And at work, there can be a challenge that you are either in the in club, the old boys club, let's face it, there is an element of that. Either you're in it or you're out of it. And if you are a positive disruptor and you're out of that circle, it can be a challenge to get your voice heard. So if I could have the next slide, that would be great. The affinity, so we are drawn to people that are like us. And in less than a second, we make decisions based on gender, age, height, race, appearance, job title, all of those things. And we might disregard somebody else's opinion. Now, if we've got an open mindset, we need to be aware that we don't filter those people that we don't believe we have an affinity with. Okay, so the next slide, please. So the impact of work on affinity bias, we're more likely to recruit people like us, more likely to give work to people like us, people they feel connected to, more likely to speak positively of them. So it might be that if we're in the ideas lab, that we filter out those opinions by people that we don't feel we have an affinity to. And I want to flag this up because we need to make sure we have a completely open mind. And those with little affinity are likely to question their abilities and past performance. So if we have the next slide, I'm sure that you will recognize some of these things. There are some people that you encourage or you see that so your boss or the organization will encourage certain people and you think, well, hang on, they're not doing anything special. They might overestimate their abilities, forgive mistakes, use potential as a way of them progressing within the organization, and you listen to them. You might promote them or recommend them even before they're ready, and you would sponsor and recommend them for decision makers. Okay, so this is almost against positive disruption because you are giving all of these benefits and privileges to certain people. So if you could have the next slide, that would be great. So if you don't have affinity bias towards an individual, you might ignore what they say or interrupt them. Start looking at your emails or phone when you're talking. I'm sure we've all been in this situation. You automatically oppose their opinions. It's almost like you're triggered. Oh, but that's a load of rubbish. Rather like my friend's husband. Immediately, oh, that we've heard that all before. And so he closes his ears. Be more critical of their abilities. Say that they've got to have more experience before they progress. even if they've got exactly the same experience as someone within their affinity group, who they're saying, oh, well, they've got so much potential, and you challenge them more. I'm sure these are things that you have come across. And this is the thing, if you are a positive disruptor, you need to be aware if you are talking to people that you don't have an affinity with, to make sure that you're really effective in what you say and your message comes across. And if you are part of the gang, the affinity group, that you positively open your ears to all ideas so that you're not filtering. Okay, so we have the next slide. Now, a very good example of this is my mate, Emil Dobrovolsky, who came on my podcast. By the way, at the end, I will share with you some additional resources, and this includes some of the podcasts and information that I've been referring to. Now, Emil came onto my podcast with his uniform on, which was wonderful. And Emil is a senior pilot for Romanian Airlines. And one of the things about his role is that he will have 15 minutes before the passengers come onto his plane, that he is flying with 250 people on board, and his team might never have met each other. They might never have worked with him, and he has to make sure that he has an open mind, includes everybody, so they become part of the group, rather than him thinking, well, I've never met that person before, how good are they? Or, well, it's her first shift, what on earth is she doing here? He has an open mind, and he feels that this is part of being a great leader, and he has disrupted the way pilots are thinking when they're working with their team. He says to them, you can see my uniform, that I'm the pilot, but here you are my ears and eyes on the plane. And if there is anything you are worried about, you are to come to the cockpit and tell me. Now, it just so happened on one particular flight, there was a young woman, it was her first ever flight, and she was at the back of the aeroplane, and all of a sudden she saw these lights flashing. And she thought, what do I do? Now, she could have had a closed mindset and thought, oh, well, you know, it's my first day here. No idea what I'm doing. I'll leave it. However, she didn't. She had an open mindset, thought, Emil has said that I should go to the front of the plane, to the cockpit, and warn him, which she did. It turned out that there was a major fault in the aeroplane. And while she was talking to him, smoke was starting to come up in the cockpit. As a result of her action and Emil's idea of an open mindset, a major catastrophe was avoided. That is positive disruption, isn't it? Not just for Emil, who changes the way that people lead, but also this young woman who was an air stewardess on her first day. I hope they were recognized for that. So let's have the next slide. We talked about if there are people in your organization, an affinity bias, that you're not part of the gang. This is even more important, but we can create excellence. We can disrupt what's going on by having a very clear vision of what we could do. But the challenge is that we need to make sure that we communicate it very, very effectively. So in a very focused way, and if necessary, the steps that you are going to make in order to achieve that. There are people, we know that in an ideas lab or in a situation where we're in a meeting, that people say, oh, well, you could do that. And they think that they're being brilliant. And you know, it might be a really good idea, but there might be a lack of practicality around it. Or it might be that that person hasn't thought through the steps to take in order to achieve that. So particularly if you are somebody that feels that your opinion is not being heard or not being valued, one thing that you can do is to think about that opinion. So it could be, we could add an app for that. And what we could do in order to do that is to make sure that we give some training, some support to all of our customers so that they feel very comfortable using this app and accessing the service that we're able to provide. One example of somebody who didn't create excellence, in the United Kingdom, there is a sort of high-end food company called Waitrose. And recently, they have moved banks for their credit cards, which my mother, aged 87, was a great fan. And all of a sudden, they've said, you have got to have a smartphone and download an app. Well, people are leaving by the hundreds, the thousands, because a lot of their client base are over 70s who don't have smartphones. They don't feel comfortable with apps, and they feel that there is going to be some security breach. If they had shared that vision and the change in another way that could positively support them and come up with a solution for those people who don't have smartphones, everything would have been a really good positive disruption. But they didn't have a clear vision. So if we have the next slide, one person or one group that were able to positively disrupt and positively deliver a vision were the Oxford University AstraZeneca team in the United Kingdom. Now, I know that Pfizer and Moderna were also working on COVID vaccines, but this is quite a remarkable situation because I've listened to their book and I will recommend it a bit later. What they did was that they anticipated that there was going to be a global pandemic at some point. They were all already working on an Ebola, a vaccine for the disease in West Africa. So they had a model for these things, but the processes often are delayed because they have to get funding for the next piece of research. This was, well, there was disruption, there was positive disruption in this process, because not only in January 2020 did Sarah Gilbert think there is going to be a pandemic. I'm hearing it from people. There's something going on in China here. I'm going to get in place things to prepare us to come up with a vaccine, which was positively disruptive because people were not in that mindset at the time, and she started to get things in place. Another positive disruption was that they brought in AstraZeneca, who don't normally do vaccinations. They were brought in to fund and manufacture the vaccine quite early on, and this meant that everything was moved forward very, very quickly, and they had a vaccine by December 2020, which was remarkable. Now, it just so happens that my sister-in-law works for AstraZeneca. She is the head of comms for the oncology work that they do. So she has regular meetings with the CEO of AstraZeneca, and he said that he was compelled to do this. No, they made no money from it, and the negative impact from other pharmaceutical companies was interesting, but he felt that they needed to do this for the world, to save the world. And one other thing, that the person that she worked with was doing all of the lab work, and there was a significant moment at the end of March 2020. So everybody was in lockdown in the United Kingdom by then, and they were hoping that one test would work so they could move forward. and it didn't work, and everybody was exhausted. And this other woman said, do you know what? I am so proud of you. We have worked so hard. We've had a setback now, but I want you to go home, have a good night's sleep, and I want to thank you for all that you've done so far. And it's remarkable to hear or read that. So it was still thinking about the end result and to move forward. So if we have the next slide, please. So in this, they have written a book. So Catherine Green was the person working in the labs, also a doctor of chemistry or a specific area. They were both very, very bright women, and they knew who to bring in the best to be part of the team. And they all had an open mindset and a really, really clear vision of what they were going to try and achieve. And they were achieving the impossible, which they did. And they created a streamlined operational process and a good network of experts to ask advice. So I've got another question for you. Why might affinity bias or lack of it impact positive disruption? Oh, I think I've missed one of my things, but never mind. We could be influenced by agreeing with our team. We might disregard a great comment from someone else. We could question the value of an idea. We might not listen to other views or other put in chat. So it's really important that we understand how we might be filtering, even if we consider we have an open mindset. Very, very important that in order to disrupt, we have that open mind. So I'll just give you a couple more seconds, because I know time is going on. Oh, okay. We might not listen to other views. Yes. We might disregard great comment from someone else. Absolutely. So could we have the next poll, which is poll 5? That would be great. How could you communicate a clear visionary idea to others? And this is crucial, particularly when people are filtering things. Be specific with your vision. Sell the benefits and outcomes. Share the steps to achieve this. How are we going to get there? Invite others to support the idea, or if you've got another idea, put it in the chat. So it'd be great to see the answers. Oh, okay, so several that are quite, so sell the benefits and outcomes, specific, share the steps, really think about how you can share that vision, that idea, so that it makes it easier for others to take it on board, to buy into your idea. So if we could have the next slide, please. Do you know, one of the things about when we go to work is that we can take a situation that we have a passive role, that we are just doing our job, that we are, you know, doing our deadlines, that we are delivering what we've been asked to do. But there is something else that we can do as well, and that is to grab the opportunities. There is a Latin word, carpe diem, seize the day, grab that opportunity. Now, I would say that I wouldn't be here unless I had seized the day. I had grabbed the opportunity when I was invited to deliver some work earlier this year. But even further back than that, I reached out to Fazila to see if I could have a chat with her to introduce myself and what I did when I was over in Dubai. I grabbed an opportunity, and I would say that this is part of positive disruption. Instead of being passive, that you are being proactive. So could we have the next slide, please? I will carry on because for some reason the slides aren't moving. But there is somebody that I would like to share some information with you, and he's now here in Dubai. He's a friend's son, and he's called Giovanni Letford, and he is a DJ. Now, he is a fully trained and qualified solicitor lawyer in the United Kingdom. And he always had this dichotomy. He was in a city firm working long hours, but his passion was R&B music, and especially being a DJ, but also giving back to his community by supporting the talent there, by training them to be DJs. He would help people that were musicians with their legal documents to make sure that they were not being that they were getting a fair deal. One day he was working as a volunteer in an organisation in Brixton, which is in South London, where there are a lot of West Indian people living, and he was in this place where they train up young people to be DJs, and a certain couple came to visit, Meghan and Prince Harry. And he took out one of his business cards and ran up to them and said, "Can I be your DJ at your wedding?" Now, this went absolutely viral. There were two hashtags, Cheeky DJ and Giovanni Letford Royal Wedding DJ. Within 24 hours, he had been interviewed on British television, on the news items, on Sky. Within 2 days, he had a contract with Sony for a mix of Dancing Queen, and everything went viral. All of a sudden, he was a DJ that was heading the nightclubs in the United Kingdom. He got work in Dubai. He went on Radio 1, which is a radio station for young people in the United Kingdom. And it was absolutely remarkable. If we have the next slide. I actually talked to him. I haven't had him on my podcast. He ended up, going to these major awards. You can see him there at the GQ award. He became a major celebrity. He was already really good, but he was doing £200 parties and weddings, a whole night's work, taking all his equipment in. All of a sudden, he was a completely different level. So if we could have the next slide, please. And now he is in Dubai, living the dream. So he's in one of the resorts, not sure which one, but he's out there as we speak, and he has got an international profile. I asked him, he's not been on the podcast, but I did ask him a few questions. I said, "What made you ask?" And he said, "If I didn't ask, it wouldn't have happened. I grabbed the opportunity." So I've got another poll for you. What is stopping you from taking up an opportunity? I'm afraid I'll fail. I'm worried that I won't be good enough. I'm concerned others won't respect me enough. I'm not ready to take up the opportunity. Opportunities don't happen to people like me. And I would say that you make your own opportunities. I wouldn't be here talking to you today unless I had accepted and created opportunities. So I am aware that we are we're slightly behind, and I apologise if we overrun by a couple of minutes. So let's see the results. Oh, I'm worried I won't be good enough. Everybody, listen to me. You are fantastic. And what's the worst thing that's going to happen? You're going to learn from it. So please grab those opportunities, create those opportunities, seize the day. Thank you very much. Could I have the next slide, the Be a Hero in Other Lives? So I also believe that being a positive disruptor, that we should be a hero in other people's lives. In other words, that not only should we have an open mindset, that we should be challenging what other people were doing with our opinions, that we have a clear vision, that we grab those opportunities, that we be a hero in others' lives. And guess what? Sometimes we are challenging the way that other people behave by our behavior. Now, I'm going to share with you a couple of stories related to my own life that are about heroes. Unfortunately, I was very, very ill in my early 20s, more of that in a moment. And I went to work just a couple of days a week in a school. And this was a girls' school for up to 11-year-olds. And very academic. These girls were being pushed to do really well in exams, to the point that some of them had real anxiety at a very young age, which was dreadful to see. But there was one girl there whose father was dying of a brain tumor. It was terrible to see. And I was always very kind to her. I would always be very kind to all of the children anyway. But the mindset at the school was, you know, they've got to be strong, and so that they can take their exams and get into proper school, you know, all of this stuff, and no kindness around it. But the mother of this little girl invited me to tea, which was slightly frowned upon, but I went to tea. And it became obvious that this little girl was really suffering and she needed some fun in her life. So with her mother's agreement, we would go out sometimes to the park, and my boyfriend at the time dressed as Father Christmas and things like that. When I left the school, I thought no more of it, because of course it wasn't appropriate to keep in touch with pupils. So could I have the next slide? But this year I had a message on LinkedIn, and it said, "Are you the Susan Wright that used to teach me?" And I said, "Yeah." And I got this: "I was just remembering you the other day and how incredible you were to me when my dad was ill. And so I looked you up. So amazed that I found you. Just wanted you to know that you really made a difference to me at that time, and it still makes a difference all these years later. So thank you. You're an incredible teacher and person." We all do that, don't we? We all positively disrupt by being authentic and ourselves and being the best version of ourselves. It's not just about thrusting to be the best. So could I have another slide? But I also had a hero in my life. And this lady, Miss Miller, was my head mistress. Now, I mentioned that when I was in my early 20s, when I was 22, I was very ill. In fact, I was involved in a very serious car accident out in Africa, and I was the only survivor, and I had significant injuries, head injuries, spinal, life-changing injuries. And as you can imagine, when I eventually came back to the United Kingdom, everybody was very distressed, and nobody ever asked how I was, which was interesting. It's how brave you are. But Miss Miller contacted me, and she phoned me up, asked to speak to me, and she said, "How can I help, Susan?" Which was complete disruption from what else there was. I had a number of months of rehabilitation. She said, "I'm going to help you. I'm going to be one of your referees, and I'm going to send you a copy of what I will write, because at some point you will be ready to go to work." So she disrupted my brain by positive disruption, by saying, you will work again, you will have a life again. And she sent me that testimonial, and that meant an awful lot to me. I've still got it, and to be honest, I read it and thought, that's not me. But this is something that we can all do in our lives. We can positively disrupt other people. So I just want you to think, who has been a hero to you, and who could you be a hero to? I always feel that we are in a position, whoever we know, that we can see what somebody's superpower is, and we can disrupt their thought by saying, do you know what? I think that you are absolutely brilliant at this. Well done. Keep sharing those thoughts, because they are very, very powerful for the team. I love the fact that you have really clear vision. It is so valuable for the team. If I could move on a couple of slides. So to 33, please. And we can lift, and we can work with each other. Now, I mentioned that I went through this terrible thing, and had spent a long time getting over it. But there was somebody else who made a real difference in my life, because I went for an audition to be in a big choir in London. And I had my sticks, walked in, and the conductor heard me and stopped me and said, Susan, you have a remarkable voice. I think you should go and get it trained, because you need to make the most of this. I had never been an opera singer before. I had been a soloist, but my family would tell me to go to the back, not show off. But that made me, disrupted my thought, and I went off and trained as an opera singer and became an international opera singer. That was a game changer for me. And we can all lift others up. We can recommend other people. We can put them forward for opportunities. We can bring them into our team. So what could you do to lift others up? So we've got another poll here. You could recommend them for opportunities, encourage other people, mention their name to others, support others to apply for new roles, bring in talented people to your projects, acknowledge individuals' contribution to projects. One of the things I do every year is that I recommend 3 women and support them in applying for awards. Now, not every woman that I approach decides to go ahead. It could be that they put their own barriers down, but I support them. One that I have supported this year does incredible work in schools, and she gets funding to support children that are going through terrible situations to prepare them for work. And I'm hoping that she will get this award. She certainly deserves it. Anyway, have we got the poll here? Oh, encourage other people, mention their name. Absolutely. So let's positively disrupt other people's opinions by doing this. So if we move forward to the next slide, another positive disruption is not to be afraid of failure. Now, this possibly sounds very odd, particularly if you are focused on getting qualifications and passing your exams. A person who never made a mistake, never tried anything new. Sometimes we have to try something new, don't we? Sometimes we have to push ourselves outside our comfort zone, and there is a possibility that we will fail, but we learn from failure. If you have an open mind and can say afterwards, okay, what could I have done differently so this worked? So if we move to the next slide, I love this quote. What if I fail? Oh, but my darling, what if you fly? What could you do to fly? Could you try try a new dance step, go to a dance class? Could it be that you go on a podcast and be interviewed? Could it be that you step up and be interviewed for the media? I don't know. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? Because you could fly, couldn't you? So let's move. Oh yes, what could you do to fly? Be brave, try something different, ask somebody for an opportunity, because asking is a big one, isn't it? We are worried that people are going to say no. Learn something new, or other, put in chat. And I do apologize for running over slightly. Learn something new is the top one. Go for it, honestly, because this is being positively disruptive to yourself, but it will impact those around you. So let's move to the next slide. And again, this Jeff Schwartz is somebody that I've interviewed for my podcast at the end of 2020. He has written a book called Work Disrupted. And quite rightly, this is something to have in our mind. In the last 2 years, our work situation has been disruptive, as I said at the beginning. But this was something that he believes was going to be inevitable with technology, that in the next few years, we were going to have far more people working remotely and hybrid teams. And one of the things that he says in this is that instead of a linear career path, we are going to have more of a portfolio career, so that we are acquiring different skills within our profession, within our sector, and we will move from project to project. So by being positively disruptive, not only are we acquiring the ability to fit in to new teams, in new teams, we have to work very quickly, and having the ability to share opinions, having an open mind, challenge what the existing norms are, we will work better as a team, more effectively. So the next slide, so this is right on the end. I believe that we need to be significant, superstar significance, and it's the significance is the quality of being worthy of attention, importance. So as well as being positively disruptive, we should show why people should listen to us. Now, that obviously is going to be by having a very clear vision, walking the talk. So it's not always about us, that we are prepared to listen to other people. So if we move to the next slide, I believe that there are some things that are going to damage our personal brand and damage us as positive disruptors if we do some of these things, like sharing gossip, putting down other people, letting others down. So we say we're going to do something and then we don't do it. Ignoring others' opinions, stepping over other people for better opportunities. We all know people like that, don't we? So if we move to this next slide, this is what you are as positive disruptors. You demonstrate trust. You demonstrate respect for others. Do as you do, not as you say. So there are plenty of people that will, tell you this, but they're doing something else. Be a positive role model. Avoid rumors and gossip. Have an open mind. All right, next slide. One person who has been a major positive disruptor is Malala. Now, she is a superstar significance, and she also is a major positive disruptor. She is the youngest ever Nobel Prize winner for peace. She's a human rights advocate. For those who don't know about her, at the age of 11, she was writing blogs about girls' education. She was very vocal about it. Age 15, the Taliban in Pakistan shot her. They went on to her school bus, said, "Where's Malala?" Shot her in the head. Miraculously, she survived. and she moved over to Birmingham to the QE hospital, where they treated her and they had to reconstruct her skull and things like that. You would have thought after going through that she would have kept her head down and played the line, but not Milana. She continued being a voice for girls' education and empowerment, hence the fact she got the Nobel Prize. She went to a local school in Birmingham, then went to Oxford University, and is still doing incredible work. She is the personification of being a positive disruptor. So the last slide, what is the first thing, because I've given you loads of ideas, what's the first thing that you will do as a result of this virtual workshop? Is it that you will share your opinions? Is it that you will challenge an existing process and come up with something better? Is it that you start talking to people that might have different opinions to you? Is it that you grab an opportunity? Is it that you show positive, by being a positive disruptor, by being significant? And the next slide, please. I have my own app, and I hope you can QR code this, and I will send it as well. In that, we've got this silly GDPR thing that has to be put on now. Just press I agree, and you don't need to put your email address in. And there is a section called Slides, Notes, Learning, and there's a folder called Positive Disruption. In that are the podcasts I've referred to, some book recommendations, and some articles that might be of additional learning, of interest. And finally, the last slide, if you want to talk to me, if you've got any questions, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, please feel free to connect with me. There's only one Susan Heaton-Wright, because it's my stage name. And if you've got any questions at all, I have my own podcast, Superstar Communicator, where we are talking about everything communication, and that includes disrupting your thoughts. So thank you very, very much. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Thank you so much, Susan. I think it's a lot to take in. I think people are normally a little bit, well, we could hear that they're a little bit afraid to take that step forward. Definitely a lot of food for questions coming through, which I think you've gone through and answered as we've gone on. It's about how they take the first step, how do they embrace the change, and really make that difference. And I think you summed it up with Carpe Diem, right? And you gave some great examples there. So it's really great to see the questions were being answered on the way through. So a few housekeeping issues. We will make this podcast, so this webinar, available on our social media channels later, and that will include the QR code just in case anybody didn't get it, so that they know where to follow you and get all the information from, etc. And the CPD certificate that accompanies this will also be sent out automatically post this session. So Susan, thank you so very much, and thank you very much for all of you that took the time to attend. I'm sure, like me, you would have found this really interesting and are already formulating how you can make a difference in that one particular subject that or topic that you've been thinking about for a while. It's not quite working, I need to change it, but how can I do that? So I'm sure you're all formulating your approaches to these, and without you, Susan, it wouldn't be possible to have that thought process. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You have a great day, Susan, and everybody else, you have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.